The briefing room fell silent the moment she walked in. Not the respectful silence that greets a decorated officer, but the kind that precedes a joke. Commander Nathan Voss leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, eyes tracking her movement with the clinical detachment of a predator assessing prey. The other operators shifted in their seats, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. She'd seen it before in different rooms, different countries, different wars. The doubt wore the same expression everywhere. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Kira Nefrin, call sign Whisper, and she carried 42 confirmed eliminations across 3 theaters of operation. The Navy didn't hand out that call sign because she was quiet. They gave it to her because her targets never heard her coming. But none of that mattered in this moment in this room, where the only thing anyone saw was a woman barely 5'6" holding a rifle case that looked too big for her frame. The mission brief flickered on the screen behind Voss. Satellite imagery of a compound nestled in the Hindu Kush Mountains, elevation markers painting the terrain in harsh topographical lines. 3 high-value targets, 48 hours before they vanished into the Pakistan tribal regions forever. Standard direct action raid, except for one problem. The only viable overwatch position was a windswept ridge 3,347 meters from the primary structure. "You're telling me," Voss said, his voice carrying the lazy confidence of someone who'd never been proven wrong, "that you can make a shot at over 2 miles in mountain winds at night to cover my team's extraction?" It wasn't a question. It was a challenge wrapped in disbelief and tied with a ribbon of condescension. Kira set her case down with deliberate care. The room smelled like stale coffee and testosterone, the fluorescent lights casting everyone in the same unflattering pallor. She'd learned long ago not to respond immediately to doubt. Words were cheap. Proof was expensive, paid for in sweat and silence and hours most people couldn't imagine enduring. "I can make the shot," she said simply. Voss laughed, not a chuckle but a full-throated bark that echoed off the concrete walls. 2 of his teammates joined in, the sound grating against her spine like broken glass. "With all due respect, ma'am," he said, the honorific dripping with sarcasm, "I've got shooters who have been doing this since you were in high school. The shot you're describing isn't just difficult, it's practically theoretical." She met his gaze without flinching. Somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan, the clock was already counting down. Somewhere in those same mountains, 3 men responsible for 17 American deaths slept soundly, believing themselves untouchable. And somewhere in this room, buried beneath layers of skepticism and prejudice, was a mission that needed completing. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees since sunset. Kira felt it through her ghillie suit, through the layers of thermal gear, through everything that separated her body from the rock beneath. She'd been prone on this ridge for 6 hours, motionless as the stone itself, watching the compound through her spotting scope. Her spotter, a Green Beret staff sergeant named Marcus Cole, lay beside her, equally still, equally patient. "Whisper, this is actual," Voss's voice crackled through her earpiece. "We're at phase line Delta, 15 minutes to breach." "Copy actual, eyes on primary structure, no movement on rooftops." The wind howled across the ridge like something alive and angry. Kira had been measuring it for hours, watching the way it bent the sparse vegetation, the way it carried dust in visible streams across the valley. The Accuracy International AXMC in front of her was a precision instrument, but at this range, it became something else entirely. A prayer sent into the physics of distance, wind, elevation, Coriolis effect, air density, and a dozen other variables that could turn a perfect shot into empty air. Cole adjusted the wind meter for the 100th time, gusting 12 to 15 from the northwest. Temps dropped another 2 degrees. She made minute adjustments to her scope, fingers moving with the muscle memory of 10,000 practice sessions. The compound sat in a pool of deeper darkness, only 2 lights visible through windows. Intelligence said the targets were in the southern building, 2nd floor. The extraction plan required Voss's team to move through an exposed courtyard, 15 seconds of vulnerability that could turn fatal if someone on those rooftops opened fire. That's where she came in, the theoretical shot, the impossible angle, the reason Voss had laughed. Whisper Actual were staged, beginning infill now. Through her scope, she watched shadows detach from other shadows. Voss's team moved like smoke, flowing over the compound wall in practice synchronization. Breaching charges placed. Hand signals exchanged. The violent ballet of close-quarters combat about to begin. Then everything went wrong. Contact East Rooftop. Voss's voice lost its professional calm. Muzzle flashes erupted from the darkness. We've got a shooter up high. Whisper, can you see him? Kira's training took over before conscious thought. Her scope swept the rooftop, searching through the chaos of shadows and brief flashes of light. There, a figure behind a low wall, AK-47 raised, firing down into the courtyard where Voss's team scrambled for cover. The math scrolled through her mind automatically. 3,347 meters, wind compensation, elevation adjustment, the target's movement pattern. I have eyes on, she said, her voice the calm at the center of the storm. Taking the shot. Negative. Whisper. That's over 2 miles. You'll give away your position for nothing. She'd already stopped listening. Her finger found the trigger. The world narrowed to breathing, heartbeat, the invisible line between her barrel and a man who would never know she existed. She exhaled slowly, feeling her heart rate drop, finding the space between one heartbeat and the next. The trigger broke clean. The rifle's report echoed across the valley like thunder from a clear sky. Through her scope, Kira watched the bullet's trajectory in her mind, seeing it arc through the darkness, climbing and falling, pushed by wind and pulled by gravity. 4 seconds. That's how long it took for physics to carry her intent across that impossible distance. 4 seconds that felt like hours. The figure on the rooftop stumbled, dropped his rifle, and collapsed backward out of sight. Silence filled the radio. Not the awkward silence of the briefing room, but something else entirely. The silence of disbelief giving way to reality. Actual. This is Whisper. Tango down, you're clear. Cole lowered his spotting scope slowly, turning to look at her with an expression she couldn't quite read in the darkness. I saw it, he whispered. I watched the whole thing and I still don't believe it. Whisper Actual. Voss's voice had changed, the condescension burned away by what he'd just witnessed. Confirming Tango down, moving to secondary objectives. How the hell did you? Focus on your mission. Actual. I've got Overwatch. She watched them move through the compound, the operation proceeding as planned now that the immediate threat had been eliminated. Her heart rate had already returned to its resting rhythm. The shot had been difficult, yes, but she'd made harder ones. Afghanistan had taught her things about patience and precision that couldn't be learned in any training program. The mountains had been her classroom, and she'd graduated with honors written in blood and distance. Whisper Actual. Jackpot. We have all 3 packages beginning exfil. Copy. I'll keep the sky clear. She maintained her position, scanning for additional threats that never materialized. The valley remained quiet except for the wind, which had finally begun to settle. Somewhere below, Voss and his team were securing 3 of the most wanted terrorists in Afghanistan, and somewhere in the darkness, a bullet fired from an impossible distance had rewritten what everyone in that briefing room thought they knew about theoretical shots. The helicopter insertion had happened at 200 hours. By the time Kira and Cole made it back to forward operating base, the sun was beginning to paint the eastern sky in shades of amber and gold. She cleaned her rifle with the same methodical precision she brought to everything, breaking down each component, checking for wear, ensuring readiness for the next mission. The weapon had performed flawlessly, but the weapon was only half the equation. Cole sat across from her in the armory, still processing what he'd witnessed. I've been spotting for special operations shooters for 8 years, he said finally. That shot shouldn't have been possible. But it was. Yeah, he shook his head. It was. The door opened and Voss walked in, still wearing his tactical gear, face streaked with camouflage paint and dust. He stopped when he saw her, and for a long moment said nothing. The other operators filed in behind him, their expressions ranging from curiosity to something that looked like respect. "Lieutenant Commander Nephrin," Voss said, using her full rank for the first time, "I owe you an apology." Kira continued cleaning her rifle, not looking up. "You owe me nothing, Commander. You had valid concerns about an untested shooter on your operation." "Untested?" He barked a laugh, but this time there was no mockery in it. "Right. I read your file after you left the briefing. 42 confirmed eliminations, 3 theaters, multiple citations for valor. I read the words, but I didn't understand them, not until tonight." She fitted the barrel back into the receiver, her hands steady. "Understanding isn't required. Results are." One of the other SEALs, a chief petty officer with a thick beard and intelligent eyes, spoke up. "That tango you dropped was about to shred us. We were pinned down, nowhere to go. Then he just dropped. I didn't even hear your shot." "The bullet arrives before the sound at that range," Cole explained. "He was dead before he heard what killed him." Voss pulled up a chair, sitting down across from Kira with the deliberate movement of someone reassessing everything they thought they knew. "Why whisper? I figured it was because you're quiet or something." She looked up from her rifle, meeting his gaze directly. "It's because my targets die in silence. They never hear me coming, never see me, never know I exist. One moment they're a threat, the next they're gone, like a whisper in the dark." The room fell quiet. Outside, the fob was beginning to wake up, the sounds of morning routines and shift changes drifting through the thin walls. But inside the armory, something had shifted. The invisible wall that had existed in the briefing room had crumbled, replaced by the mutual respect of professionals who'd seen each other perform under pressure. "Those 3 we grabbed tonight," Voss said quietly. "They're responsible for an IED attack that killed 17 Marines last month. Intel says they were planning something bigger. You saved a lot of lives tonight, Whisper, more than you'll ever know." Kira finished reassembling her rifle, function-checking the bolt. "That's the job." Her call sign hadn't always been Whisper. For the first 3 years of her military career, she'd flown helicopters, piloting Black Hawks on medical evacuation missions throughout Iraq. Captain Kira Nephrin had been good at it, precise and unflappable under fire, the kind of pilot who could set down in a hot landing zone and extract wounded soldiers while mortars rained around her. Then came the day that changed everything. The mission had been routine, at least by Iraq standards. Extract a wounded patrol from a contested village, get them to the field hospital before they bled out. She'd done it 100 times before. But on that day, during final approach, an RPG had struck her helicopter's tail rotor. The Black Hawk had spun like a top, physics and gravity conspiring to pull them from the sky. Kira had fought the controls with everything she had, using every trick she'd ever learned about auto-rotation and emergency procedures. She'd managed to convert the uncontrolled spin into something resembling a controlled crash, putting the bird down in a field outside the village instead of into the village itself. Her co-pilot had died on impact. Her crew chief lost both legs. The wounded soldiers they'd been trying to save had survived, along with Kira herself, who walked away with a fractured collarbone and severe burns on her left arm. The investigation cleared her of fault. The medal they gave her said she was a hero, but Kira couldn't get back in the cockpit. Every time she tried, she saw the ground spinning, heard her co-pilot's last scream, felt the helicopter coming apart around her. The flight surgeon called it acute stress reaction. She called it the end of everything she'd built her identity around. For 6 months she'd existed in bureaucratic limbo, filling out paperwork, attending counseling sessions, trying to convince herself that her career wasn't over at 28. Then a master sergeant in the armory, a grizzled infantry veteran who'd seen her frustration, had made a simple suggestion. You've got good hands and better eyes. Ever think about shooting? She hadn't, but desperation made people try new things. The rifle range became her therapy. The precision required, the focus, the way everything else fell away when she looked through a scope, it was meditation wrapped in gunpowder. She discovered she had a natural talent for reading wind and distance, for the mathematical beauty of ballistics. More importantly, she discovered she could still serve, still contribute, still be useful. The Navy had trained her as a designated marksman, then sent her to advanced sniper school where she outshot everyone, including instructors who'd been pulling triggers since before she was born. They assigned her to a special operations unit that needed long-range precision support. They gave her the call sign Whisper after her first mission, when she'd eliminated 3 Taliban commanders in as many minutes from positions they never saw. That was 4 years ago. Now, sitting in the FOB Armory watching Commander Voss's team process their successful mission, Kira thought about the strange path that had led her here. How the worst moment of her life had somehow become a door to a different kind of excellence. How being broken had taught her to be something new. "You're thinking pretty hard over there," Cole observed. She smiled slightly, "Just remembering why I do this." "And why's that?" "Because I can." The debriefing happened at 1400 hours in the operations center, a concrete bunker that smelled like stale air and fresh coffee. The mission had been classified as an exceptional success. 3 high-value targets captured alive, actionable intelligence recovered from the compound, and 0 American casualties. The brigadier general running the task force had personally attended the debrief, his presence lending weight to what everyone already knew. This operation would be studied and referenced for years to come. Commander Voss presented his team's perspective, walking through each phase with professional precision. He didn't embellish or dramatize. He simply described what happened, including the moment when hostile fire had pinned them down, and Lieutenant Commander Nefrin had eliminated the threat from an observation post over 2 miles away. "The shot was 3,347 meters, Voss stated, his voice carrying clearly through the briefing room. "Confirmed by laser rangefinder. Wind speed varying between 12 and 15 knots. Temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Target was mobile, firing from partial cover. Time of flight approximately 4 seconds. Single shot, center mass hit, immediate incapacitation." The general, a lean man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many wars, looked directly at Kira. "Lieutenant Commander Nefrin, can you confirm Commander Voss's account?" "Yes, sir, that's accurate." "That's a remarkable shot. It was within the weapon system's capabilities and my training, sir." The general's mouth twitched, something that might have been a smile. "Within capabilities, right." He turned to the intelligence officer standing near the projection screen. "What's the longest confirmed kill shot in military history?" "Sir, that would be a Canadian Special Forces sniper in Iraq, 2017. Distance was 3,540 meters. So this shot was approximately 193 meters shorter, sir. But among American military personnel, it's the second longest confirmed shot on record and the longest ever made by a female service member." Kira kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a familiar mixture of pride and discomfort. She didn't want to be the longest shooting woman. She just wanted to be a professional who did her job well. But she'd learned that sometimes you didn't get to choose what made you notable. General stood and everyone in the room automatically straightened. "Let me be clear about something," he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "This mission succeeded because every member of this task force performed their duty with exceptional skill. Commander Voss and his team executed a flawless direct action raid. Lieutenant Commander Nefrin provided precision overwatch that saved American lives. That's what matters. Not gender, not preconceptions, not who laughed at who in a briefing room." The last part was directed at Voss, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Yes, sir, Voss said quietly. Good, because I'm assigning Lieutenant Commander Nephrin as permanent precision support for this task force. Commander Voss, you have any objections? No, sir, none at all. The general nodded, satisfied. Then let's get back to work. We've got 17 more targets on the list, and none of them are going to capture themselves. The room emptied slowly, operators and staff filtering out to their various duties. Kira remained seated, processing the general's decision. Permanent assignment meant she'd be here for the duration, working with Voss's team on operations throughout the region. It meant more missions like last night, more impossible shots, more opportunities to prove that the first time hadn't been luck. It also meant working every day with people who doubted her, trying to turn skeptics into believers one mission at a time. Cole appeared beside her carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without asking. Congratulations on the permanent assignment. Is it a congratulation? Feels more like extended judgment. Maybe, or maybe it's an opportunity. He sat down, wrapping his hands around his own coffee cup. You know what the hardest part about being exceptional is? People never let you forget it. They either resent you for it or put you on a pedestal. Both are exhausting. Speaking from experience, I'm the first Native American to graduate Army Special Forces Sniper School in 20 years. Every shot I miss, somebody remembers my ethnicity. Every shot I make, somebody thinks I'm proving something. Can't just be a soldier doing his job. Kira sipped her coffee, understanding the weight behind his words. They'd never talked about this before, the burden of representation, the exhaustion of being firsts and onlys in spaces that hadn't expected people like them to succeed. But here, in the quiet aftermath of a successful mission, the truth felt safe to speak. So how do you handle it? She asked. Cole shrugged. Keep shooting, keep being professional. Eventually people stop seeing the adjectives and start seeing the results. Takes time though, years sometimes. I might not have years. Then make the most of the missions you get. Outside, an F-16 screamed overhead, its engines rattling the building's concrete walls. The war continued, indifferent to their conversation, indifferent to their struggles with perception and proof. Somewhere in these mountains, more targets waited. More missions would need planning. More shots would need taking. Kira finished her coffee, feeling its warmth spread through her chest. Cole was right. She couldn't control what people thought before they saw her work. She could only control the work itself. The shots, the professionalism, the steady accumulation of proof that excellence had nothing to do with preconceptions. Thanks for the coffee, she said, standing. Thanks for making that shot. Made my job as a spotter significantly easier. She smiled. That's what I'm here for. No, Cole said, his expression serious. You're here because you're one of the best shooters I've ever seen. Gender's got nothing to do with it. The sooner everyone figures that out, the better. She left the briefing room carrying those words like armor, ready for whatever came next. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of preparation and execution. 4 more missions with Voss's team, each one building trust through shared danger and successful outcomes. Kira made shots at 1,800 meters, 2,400 meters, once at 3,100 meters in conditions that had Cole shaking his head in disbelief. She missed twice, both times calling the miss before the bullet even arrived, already calculating corrections for a follow-up shot that never became necessary because Voss's team had adapted to provide alternative solutions. The dynamic in the briefing room had shifted. When she walked in now, people made space for her, asked her opinion on lines of sight and shooting positions, treated her assessments with the same weight they gave to any other subject matter expert. Voss had stopped questioning her capabilities and started integrating them into his tactical planning, designing operations around the reality of what she could deliver rather than theoretical doubts. But there were still whispers. In the chow hall, in the gym, in the informal networks where skepticism lived longer than evidence. She heard fragments of conversation that cut deeper than enemy fire, lucky shots, probably the spotter doing the real work. Wait until she folds under real pressure. Kira ignored them. She'd learned long ago that words from people who'd never done the job weren't worth the breath they consumed. But Cole noticed her noticing, and one evening in the armory, while they were preparing for the next mission, he broke the comfortable silence. "They're still talking," he said, not making it a question. "They're always talking, comes with the territory. Doesn't make it less exhausting." She looked up from the rifle she was cleaning, meeting his eyes. "You want to know the truth? I'm tired of proving myself. Every day, every mission having to be perfect because anything less than perfect confirms someone's prejudice. It's exhausting, but the alternative is letting them be right, and I'm not willing to do that. That's a hell of a burden to carry." "It's the burden everyone like us carries. You said it yourself. We don't get to just be soldiers. We're representatives, examples, proof of concepts, whether we want to be or not." Cole nodded slowly. "My grandfather was a code talker in World War II, Navajo. They used our language because nobody else could break it, helped win the war in the Pacific. But after the war ended, people forgot real quick. Went back to treating us like we didn't matter, like we hadn't bled for the same country. He told me once that being exceptional doesn't change minds permanently. It only changes them temporarily until people forget again. So why do we do it? Because someone has to. Because the next person like us will have a slightly easier path because we walked it first. Because excellence is its own justification, regardless of whether people appreciate it." He paused, then added quietly, "And because what else are we gonna do? Give up?" "No," Kira said firmly, "we don't give up." "Then we keep shooting." She smiled. "We keep shooting." The next mission briefing revealed a target that made everyone in the room tense. Abu Hakim al-Rashid, a bomb maker responsible for attacks across 3 countries, had been located in a compound near the Pakistan border. Intelligence indicated he was preparing to move within 72 hours. The mission window was narrow, the stakes were high, and the tactical challenges were significant. "The problem," Voss explained, pointing to satellite imagery on the screen, "is that he never leaves this building. Never. Not in 3 weeks of surveillance. He conducts all his business from a second-floor room with reinforced walls and minimal windows." "So we breach," one of his operators suggested. "Negative. The compound is hardened and heavily guarded. A direct assault would take too long, give him time to destroy intelligence materials or escape through tunnels we know exist but haven't mapped. We need him exposed, vulnerable, before we commit to a breach." The room fell silent as everyone studied the imagery, looking for angles and opportunities. Kira leaned forward, her mind already calculating distances and sight lines. "What about prayer time?" Voss turned to her. "Explain." "He's devout, right? That's in the intelligence profile. 5 daily prayers, conservative interpretation. He won't pray in that reinforced room, it's disrespectful. He needs an open space, preferably with a view of the sky." The intelligence officer nodded slowly. "There's a rooftop terrace, northeast corner. We've seen guards up there but never al-Rashid himself." "Because we've been watching during the day," Kira said. "Fajr prayer happens before sunrise. Dark, quiet, private. If he's going anywhere outside that room, it'll be then. 5 minutes of vulnerability." Voss studied the imagery with new eyes, measuring distances and angles. "The nearest overwatch position with line of sight to that terrace is," he trailed off, using a laser pointer to measure, 4,000 meters. That's past any confirmed shot in history. "I can make it," Kira said quietly. The room erupted in overlapping voices, objections and calculations and debates about possibility versus probability. But through the noise, Voss raised a hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight earned through 3 weeks of successful operations. "Can you make it?" he asked, not challenging, genuinely wanting to know. Kira looked at the imagery, calculating variables. Wind at that altitude, temperature at dawn, the brief window of exposure, the human element, a target who wouldn't be moving tactically but performing a ritual predictable in his movements. It was an impossible shot by any objective measure, but she'd already made one impossible shot, and that success had redefined what impossible meant. "I can make it," she repeated, "but I need perfect conditions. Clear sky, stable wind, dawn light. And I need time to preposition, at least 12 hours to account for temperature changes and wind patterns." Voss looked at the general, who'd been watching this exchange in silence. The general studied Kira for a long moment, then nodded once. "You get one shot. If you miss, we abort and find another approach. Al-Rashid will know we're hunting him, and he'll disappear into the tribal regions where we'll never find him again. Everything rides on your ability to deliver under the most extreme conditions imaginable." "Yes, sir, I understand." "Then God help us all," the general said quietly, "because we're betting a lot on theoretical physics and one woman's skill." The insertion happened 36 hours later under a moonless sky. Two helicopters, flying nap of the earth through mountain passes, dropped Kira, Cole, and a four-man security element onto a ridge that overlooked nothing but darkness and empty air. They moved quietly through the night, climbing to a position that would give them line of sight to the target compound 4 kilometers away. By the time they reached the shooting position, Kira's legs burned from the climb and her lungs ached from the altitude. But her hands remained steady as she set up her rifle, extending the bipod, building a stable platform on the rocky ground. Cole established his spotting position beside her, setting up laser rangefinders and weather monitoring equipment with practiced efficiency. The security element spread out in a loose perimeter, pulling security while watching two professionals prepare for a shot that would either end a terrorist's career or become a cautionary tale about hubris. "Range to target building," Cole murmured. I pressed to his spotting scope. 4,017 meters, Kira confirmed, reading her own laser rangefinder. "Wind currently 5 knots from the west, but that'll change as the sun rises, always does in these mountains." They settled in to wait. Time in a sniper hide was different from other forms of waiting, more patient, more focused, measured in heartbeats and breath cycles rather than minutes and hours. Kira had learned to inhabit this liminal space, neither fully present nor absent, aware of everything while attached to nothing. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human concerns. Somewhere below, Abu Hakim al-Rashid slept, dreaming whatever bomb makers dreamed, unaware that 4 kilometers away a woman he'd never met was preparing to end his story. Cole broke the silence. "You ever think about the people we shoot?" "Sometimes." "Does it bother you?" Kira considered the question carefully. "They're not people when I'm looking through the scope. They're targets, problems to be solved with applied mathematics and steady hands. If I thought of them as people, fathers, sons, someone's brother, I couldn't do the job, so I don't. I think about the mission, the Americans whose lives depend on this shot, the future attacks prevented, the abstract concept of justice measured in meters and minutes." "That's a remarkably honest answer." "You asked an honest question. Does that make us cold, calculating?" "It makes us professionals. Soldiers have been grappling with this same question for thousands of years. The answer doesn't change just because we're using different weapons." Cole was quiet for a moment. "My grandfather told me something else beyond the code talker stories. He said that warriors carry the weight of what they do, but they carry it so others don't have to. That's the bargain. We see the things, do the things that let everyone else sleep peacefully. Doesn't mean it's easy, just means it's necessary." "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man." "He died 3 years ago. Never talked much about the war, but when he did, you listened. He would have liked you, I think, respected what you do." Kira smiled in the darkness. "I would have liked to meet him." They fell silent again, watching and waiting as the night slowly gave way to the first gray suggestions of dawn. The temperature began to drop as it always did in those hours before sunrise, when the world held its breath between darkness and light. Kira made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating for the changing conditions, staying ready. Movement, Cole said suddenly. Rooftop terrace, 2 individuals. Kira's scope swung to the target building, finding the terrace in the pre-dawn gloom. 2 figures, one clearly armed, standing guard. Then a third figure emerged, taller, moving with the deliberate posture of someone focused on ritual rather than threat. That's him, Cole confirmed, cross-referencing with facial recognition software linked to his spotting scope. Abu Hakim al-Rashid. He's positioning for prayer. The bomb maker spread a prayer rug on the rooftop, facing east toward Mecca. The guard stepped back, giving him space while maintaining overwatch of the surrounding area. This moment of devotion would last 5 minutes, maybe less. 5 minutes of exposure, of vulnerability, of opportunity. Kira settled into her shooting position, finding the rifle's natural point of aim. Her breathing slowed, deepened, became automatic. The rifle was an extension of her body, the scope an extension of her eye. She could see al-Rashid clearly now in the growing light, a man kneeling in prayer, oblivious to the judgment waiting 4 kilometers away. The wind had picked up slightly, 7 knots now, quartering from the west-northwest. Cole fed her constant updates, temperature, barometric pressure, the minute fluctuations that would affect her bullet's flight path. The math scrolled through her mind like a familiar prayer of its own. Muzzle velocity, ballistic coefficient, spin drift, Coriolis effect. A dozen variables, each one critical, each one requiring perfect calculation. Wind steady at 7, Cole murmured. Temperature 31 degrees. Barometric pressure 24.8 inches. You're dialed in. Al-Rashid remained kneeling, hands raised in supplication, speaking prayers only he and his God could hear. For a moment, Kira felt the weight of what she was about to do. This man, regardless of his crimes, was someone. He had history, beliefs, a life that would end when her bullet arrived. But then she thought of the 17 Marines his bombs had killed, the countless civilians maimed and murdered by his devices, the future attacks he was planning that would never happen if she made this shot. The calculus of war reduced complex moral questions to simple equations. His life versus countless others. She exhaled slowly, letting her heart rate drop into the zone where the world became clear and still. Her finger found the trigger, taking up the slack with infinite patience. Through the scope, al-Rashid lowered his head toward the ground, the movement of prayer making him briefly stationary, perfectly exposed. "Send it," Cole whispered. The trigger broke like glass, smooth and inevitable. The rifle's recoil pushed against her shoulder, familiar and controlled. Through the scope, she watched the space where al-Rashid knelt, knowing the bullet was already in flight, already committed to its ballistic arc across 4 kilometers of morning air. 5 seconds. That's how long it would take for the bullet to travel that impossible distance. 5 seconds for physics and skill and calculation to prove themselves against doubt and skepticism. 5 seconds that would determine whether she'd made history or made a mistake. 4,000 meters away, Abu Hakim al-Rashid finished his prostration and began to rise. The bullet arrived before he reached vertical. Through the spotting scope, Cole saw it happen with perfect clarity. The .338 Lapua Magnum round, weighing 250 grains and traveling at supersonic speeds, struck al-Rashid in the upper chest with devastating precision. The bomb maker collapsed, his prayer rug suddenly red, his morning devotions ended with permanent finality. The guard on the rooftop spun, confused, reaching for his radio. But before he could transmit, before he could process what had happened, the sound of Kira's shot finally arrived, the supersonic crack rolling across the valley like distant thunder. By then it was already too late. By then Voss's team was already moving, helicopters already inbound, the operation's next phase already unfolding with practiced efficiency. "Confirm," Cole said, his voice steady despite what he just witnessed. "Target down, clean hit, center mass." Kira didn't respond immediately. She was already scanning the rooftop through her scope, looking for additional threats, maintaining her overwatch position while Voss's team executed the raid. But somewhere beneath the professional focus, beneath the training and discipline, she felt it. The quiet satisfaction of an impossible thing accomplished, a theoretical shot made real. "Whisper actual," Voss's voice came through her earpiece. "Confirmed jackpot, target neutralized, your shot was good, damn good." "Copy actual, maintaining overwatch." She watched through her scope as Voss's team swept through the compound, securing rooms and gathering intelligence. The operation proceeded flawlessly, no resistance, no complications. By the time the sun cleared the eastern peaks, flooding the valley with golden light, 3 helicopters were lifting off, carrying operators, intelligence materials, and the confirmed death of one of the region's most prolific bomb makers. The security element collapsed back to Kira and Cole's position, preparing for extraction. A 4th helicopter would pick them up in 20 minutes, carrying them back to the FOB where debriefings and paperwork and the mundane aftermath of exceptional violence waited. Cole started breaking down his spotting equipment, moving with the efficient motions of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. 4,017 meters, he said quietly. New record. Longest confirmed shot by any American service member in history. You know that's going to follow you everywhere now, right? I know. How do you feel about it? Kira cleared her rifle, ensuring the chamber was empty before beginning to pack her equipment. How did she feel? Proud, certainly. Relieved that the shot had connected. Satisfied that a dangerous man was no longer a threat. But also tired, tired of being measured, tired of being doubted, tired of carrying the weight of representation. I feel like I did my job, she said finally. Same as every other mission. Except this one breaks physics. This one rewrites the record books. This one proves something that people said was impossible. She looked at him, seeing understanding in his eyes. He got it, the burden and the pride mixed together, inseparable. What do you want me to say, Cole? That I'm thrilled to be famous? That I wanted my name attached to a number that people will use to judge every shot I take from now on? I just wanted to serve. I just wanted to be good at my job. The rest of this, the records, the attention, the significance, that's everyone else's narrative, not mine. Cole smiled slightly. You know what the difference is between you and most people who do exceptional things. They want the glory. You just want to work. Is there something wrong with that? No, it's probably the most honest form of professionalism I've ever seen. The extraction helicopter appeared on schedule, its rotors beating the thin mountain air into submission. They loaded quickly, efficiently, the security element covering until everyone was aboard. As the helicopter lifted, Kira looked back at the ridge where she'd spent 12 hours preparing for one shot. It looked like every other ridge in Afghanistan, rocky, barren, unforgiving. Nothing marked it as special. Nothing indicated that history had been made there. That felt right somehow. The best work happened in unmarked places, by people nobody expected, for reasons that had nothing to do with glory or recognition. The work was its own justification, its own reward. Everything else was just noise. The helicopter banked, turning toward the FOB, carrying them away from the mission and toward whatever came next. The debriefing lasted 3 hours. Trajectory analysis, weapon performance data, environmental conditions, every variable documented and analyzed by people whose job was turning exceptional performance into replicable doctrine. The Brigadier General attended again, along with several officers Kira had never seen before, whose presence suggested this mission's significance extended beyond the immediate tactical victory. When it was finally over, when every question had been answered and every detail recorded, the general asked Kira to remain behind. The room emptied slowly, leaving just the two of them in the concrete bunker with its maps and screens and the lingering smell of strong coffee. "That shot you made is going to be studied for decades," the general said without preamble. "Every sniper school, every advanced marksmanship course, every tactical development program, they'll all want to understand how you did it. You understand that, right?" "Yes, sir." "You're also going to become a symbol, whether you want to be or not. The first woman to hold the longest confirmed shot record. The first female special operations sniper to achieve this level of recognition. There are people who will celebrate that and people who will resent it. How do you feel about that reality?" Kira considered her answer carefully. The general wasn't asking a rhetorical question. He genuinely wanted to know, needed to understand how she would handle what came next. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." "I didn't join the military to be a symbol or make political statements. I joined to serve. When I became a pilot, I was just trying to be the best pilot I could be. When I became a sniper, same thing. The fact that some people see my gender before they see my performance, that's their problem, not mine. I can't control what people think. I can only control what I do." The general nodded slowly. "That's a mature perspective, but the attention will come anyway. Media requests, speaking engagements, pressure to represent things you never asked to represent. The military will want to use your success in recruiting materials. Politicians will want to reference you in debates about women in combat. None of that requires your consent. It just happens." "Then I'll handle it the same way I handle everything else, sir, with professionalism and focus on the mission. And if people doubt you, if they say the shot was luck or question the data or invent reasons why it shouldn't count, they can doubt all they want. The shot happened, the target's dead, the mission succeeded. Their doubt doesn't change those facts." The general studied her for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he smiled, a brief expression that softened years of command responsibility. "You know what I like about you, Lieutenant Commander? You're not trying to prove anything except your own competence. That's rare. Most people carrying the kind of skill you have can't help but make it about ego, but you just want to do good work. It's the only thing that matters, sir." "I disagree. Legacy matters. The trail you blaze matters. The doors you open for people who come after you matter. You may not want to be a symbol, but you are one. My advice: accept it. Use it. Make sure the next woman who wants to be a special operations sniper has an easier path than you did." Kira felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. She'd been so focused on proving herself, on meeting the immediate challenges, that she hadn't thought much about the long-term implications. But the general was right. Somewhere, probably right now, a young woman was reading about this mission, seeing that it was possible, imagining herself in this role. That mattered, even if Kira found the responsibility exhausting. "I'll do my best, sir." That's all anyone can ask. Dismissed. She stood, saluted, and left the briefing room. Outside, the Afghan sun blazed down on the FOB with relentless intensity. Soldiers moved through their routines, unaware or unconcerned that history had been made in these mountains. For them, it was just another day in an endless deployment, another mission among thousands, another data point in a war that had consumed years of their lives. But for Kira, walking back to her quarters through the dust and heat, everything felt different. She'd achieved something that would outlive her, would be referenced and studied long after she retired. The shot at 4,017 meters had transcended the immediate tactical victory and become something larger, something symbolic. She wasn't sure how she felt about that yet. The news spread through military channels with the speed of digital communication. By the next morning, Kira's inbox contained dozens of messages, congratulations from former instructors, interview requests from military publications, emails from officers she'd never met expressing their admiration. The attention was overwhelming and oddly impersonal, people responding to her achievement while knowing nothing about her as a person. Cole found her in the armory, methodically cleaning her rifle for the third time that week. "You hiding?" he asked with a knowing smile. "I'm maintaining my equipment." "You've maintained that rifle into oblivion. It's probably the cleanest weapon in Afghanistan right now." He pulled up a chair, sitting backward on it with his arms crossed over the backrest. "It's okay to admit you're overwhelmed." "I don't know how to do this," Kira admitted quietly. "The shooting, the missions, the tactical stuff that I understand. But this, people I've never met having opinions about me, requests to speak at events, to be interviewed, to represent things I never asked to represent. I don't have training for this." "Nobody does. It's the part they don't teach in sniper school. How to handle being exceptional in a world that wants to either worship you or tear you down." "How do you deal with it?" Cole shrugged. "I remember why I do the job, not for recognition, not for records, because there are people who need protecting and I have skills that can protect them. Everything else is noise. Important noise sometimes, noise that matters in the bigger picture, but still just noise compared to the mission." A knock on the door interrupted them. Voss leaned in, his expression serious. "Lieutenant Commander, you got a minute?" Kira set down her cleaning rod. "Of course, sir." Voss entered fully, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncomfortable. "I owe you more than an apology," he said without preamble. "I owe you an acknowledgement. I judged you before I saw you work. I doubted you because of assumptions that had nothing to do with your actual capabilities. That was wrong, unprofessional, and potentially dangerous to my team." "Sir, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. Because if I don't acknowledge my mistake explicitly, I'll make it again with someone else. You saved my team's lives twice now. You've performed with a level of skill that exceeds most shooters I've worked with, regardless of gender. The fact that I couldn't see that until you proved it, that's a failure of leadership on my part." Kira appreciated his honesty more than he probably knew. Genuine apologies were rare in military culture, especially from senior officers to junior ones. "I appreciate you saying that, Commander. I'm also putting you in for a Silver Star. Your shot at 4,017 meters under operational conditions to eliminate a high-value target, that's not just marksmanship excellence. That's valor under fire, demonstrated skill that saved American lives and disrupted enemy operations. You deserve the recognition." "Sir, I was just doing my job." "And sometimes doing your job exceptionally well deserves commendation. Accept the nomination, Lieutenant Commander. It matters to the people coming after you." After Voss left, Cole chuckled softly. "You know what just happened, right? You broke him, made him confront his own biases and grow as a leader. That's almost as impressive as the 4,017-meter shot." "I didn't break anyone. I just did my job until the evidence was undeniable." That's how you break through prejudice, undeniable evidence, repeated until reality overwhelms assumption. It's exhausting, but it works. Slowly, grudgingly, but it works. Kira picked up her rifle again, needing the familiar comfort of the weapon in her hands. "I'm tired, Cole. Tired of being a teaching moment. Tired of my